I love remakes of classic films.
What?
No, of course I don't. I hate them. But this one is not a bag of total whack. It's got some decent actors and a decent soundtrack if you're of a certain age. This is the 2009 remake of The Stepfather. I'm Jay Harangue and I talk about soft porn and stalker movies.
You should subscribe.
Okay, so we start with this guy. He's just killed his family and shaved his beard off so nobody will recognise him. His name is Grady Edwards and the police think he may have done this before, as there's some guy going around marrying into families, paying for everything in cash, then killing them all.
This is all very unfortunate.
6 months later, he's at this grocery store and he meets this single woman with kids.
I lost my wife and daughter in an accident last year. Drunk driver.
Oh, poor thing.
This is Susan Harding, and she's lonely and desperate. So 6 months later, he's already moved in and they're engaged.
Oh.
Susan's son Michael is home from military school because he was naughty. His girlfriend Kelly has picked him up from the airport. Yes, that is who you think it is.
She's the very devil herself.
They've thrown a surprise party to welcome Michael home. She introduces the killer as David.
Good to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you.
Michael already dislikes him because he's an American teenager in a film, and David's not his real daddy. So everyone's loving the party, all Susan's friends think David is amazing, and Kelly and Michael are making out by the pool. Susan's friend Jackie has even found David a job at a local real estate agency, so he can spend more time with his new family. David asks Michael to meet him in the basement, where he tells him how important family is to him. Michael is a competitive swimmer, and David has managed to swing it so that he can use the pool in the school he got kicked out of during the summer. David is very keen to keep this family together.
You and me, father and son. Stepfather.
Bit awkward. Anyway, when Michael says goodbye to Kelly, David is looking on and sinister music is playing in the background. Susan tells Michael she really wants him to give David a chance because if he leaves her, she's going to be sad and lonely again. And then they bang.
Ew, gross. That's disgusting.
I meant David and Susan, loudly so that Michael can hear them.
That could backfire.
The next day, Michael and Kelly are making out in the pool, while Susan's younger son Sean is playing video games loudly upstairs.
John, turn that down now, I mean it.
Turn it down.
Oh, dear.
Sean's like, oh shit, David's mental. David also has issues with the heavy petting going on outside in the swimming pool. That evening at dinner...
I've missed family dinners like this.
You were married before?
Drunk driver.
I'm sorry, David.
I guess that's why family's so important to me, Michael.
There's a daughter too, by the way, but she's so irrelevant to the plot, I can't even be asked to find out what her name is.
Fair enough.
Jay, the kid's real dad, has arrived to pick them up, but Michael isn't speaking to him, so he stays in the house. The next morning, their neighbour, Mrs. Cutter, comes over and tells Susan she thinks David looks a lot like the man in the pictures he saw in America's Most Wanted, who killed his family. Susan laughs with David about what Mrs. Cutter has said, but Michael has overheard them talking and is concerned. Later, David takes Michael to lunch and asks him to be his best man at his wedding.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, that's great. That is great.
Then David starts talking about his daughter.
My little Michelle was my whole world. Lisa would have turned 11 next week.
Who's Lisa?
My daughter.
I'm sorry, I thought you said her name was Michelle.
Did I? Mm-hmm. It's Lisa Michelle. You must have heard it wrong.
Oh.
Great save. David knows he's made an error, so takes it out on this yard sign. When he gets home, he checks the photo on America's Most Wanted's website. It looks absolutely nothing like him, but for plot purposes, it looks exactly like him. So David goes round to deal with Mrs. Cutter. Later that day, Michael and Kelly are making out in the pool. They decide to take it upstairs, and Michael goes to shut the door, but David is there.
So are you just watching us?
Doing what? I just got home from work.
At dinner, Susan and David start talking to Michael about sex, which is a bit of a joke considering he's 17, 18, but whatever. Susan's ex Jay comes back with the other kids, and Sean's told him about the turn it down incident.
This bastard tried to choke Sean.
I didn't choke him.
Yeah, Sean says you put your hand around his neck.
So it all kicks off and it ends with Susan threatening to call the police, Jay being marched out of the house by Michael, and David apologising for putting his hands on Sean. At work the next day, Jackie asks David to fill in a load of ID forms that she needs, but he has no intention of doing that, so he bins the forms and quits the job. Jay comes round that evening when Susan's out and apologises for the other night. David invites him in, but when it turns out Jay has been looking into his true identity, David deals with him.
What?
I heard something.
Oh, don't worry, it's just David downstairs killing your dad, stealing his phone and hiding his body in the freezer. But uh-oh, looks like Michael is about to catch him at it.
David? Yeah, what do you need, Michael?
Nothing.
Okay.
Susan is out with Jackie, and Jackie is now suspicious of David.
The same day that I ask him for details about his past, he just up and quits.
When Susan gets home, she goes up to Michael's room and she's like, sorry your dad didn't turn up. David is a better dad than him anyway.
I don't think so.
Meanwhile, David is downstairs texting Michael from his dead dad's phone.
Sorry I didn't make it, but I did check out your soon-to-be stepfather. He seems to be who he says he is.
And Michael cries. The next morning, the police are across the street because someone found Mrs. Cutter dead, but everyone thinks she just fell down the stairs. Then Jackie calls David saying she still needs him to fill out the form she gave him, so David's going to have to deal with Jackie. Michael is out by the pool trying to convince Kelly that David is the killer from America's Most Wanted, but all Kelly wants to do is make out in the pool. David tells Michael that he's going out to pick up Sean and his pointless sister, so Michael sees this as an opportunity to look through all David's stuff. Kelly's like, look Michael, this is pointless. We could be making out in the pool.
If we find nothing, I'll drop it forever. I promise.
In the car, David gets a call from Susan saying she's picking up the kids, so he heads back to the house. When he gets back, Michael and Kelly are still looking through his stuff. He doesn't catch them, but he knows they've been snooping around because he sees their wet footprints through the house.
Smart.
Later that night, Michael is on the phone to Kelly saying, yeah, you're right, David's fine. But then David comes to his room and tells him to stop sneaking around. So Michael immediately starts sneaking around. He goes onto the computer and starts looking at the sketch of the family killer on America's Most Wanted. The next day he tells Kelly about this, but Kelly's had enough. She's like, I didn't come over here to talk about David. Are we going to make out in the pool or not? Michael's like, I want to talk about David.
I'm leaving. I'm going home.
Bye then. That night in the basement, David sees a text on Jay's phone.
Want to talk to you about David. Call me, Jackie.
Michael calls his dad and hears it ringing in the basement. David pretends it was his phone ringing, but Michael's not buying it, so he takes a photo of David on his phone. Susan is going to be taking Sean and his sister out this evening, so it's just David and Michael in the house. When Michael gets out of the shower, he sees that David has deleted the photo he took of him with his phone. Michael goes on to Kelly's to tell her about this, but she's not having any of it. Meanwhile, David has seen an email from Jackie to Susan telling her that she's hired an investigator to look into David. So he goes round to Jackie's house and drowns her. He gets back home and he's in bed with Susan when Kelly drops Michael home. Michael has decided enough is enough and goes down to the basement.
He's hiding something in there, all right? I know he is.
He uses the lightning to mask the sound of him breaking the window and finds his dad's bag and phone. But David is up and about. Kelly is supposed to call Michael from her car if she sees anything. But as she calls Michael, his phone vibrates, falls off the table and smashes. So Kelly heads to the basement to warn Michael, who's just found his dad in the freezer.
What are you doing, Kelly?
Michael hears him attack her and is trying to get out of the basement, but David leaves him locked in there while he gets his body disposal tools out. But Susan wakes up and sees him. David goes crazy and starts shouting about family values. Susan's like, what are you on about, David?
I thought you could be Mrs. Grady Edwards!
What did you say?
Who am I here?
David, what?
David!
So the cat's out of the bag now. David chases Susan up the stairs with a knife while Michael breaks out of the basement and helps Kelly. He hears the noise upstairs of David trying to break into the bathroom where Susan's hiding. When David eventually breaks through the door, Susan uses a broken mirror shard to stab him in the neck. It looks like he's dead, but if you've ever seen any of the original Stepfather films, you'll know that he's virtually indestructible.
True.
So while Susan is downstairs hugging Michael and Kelly, they manage to escape up to the loft, and then there's this fight. Michael is rushed to hospital, and when he wakes up,
David, where is he?
Nobody knows.
David has a new identity. He's working at Home Depot looking for his next family. Oh, here's one.
Hey, I'm Chris Ames.
Julie King. It's nice to meet you.
Oh, it's nice to meet you.
And that's the end of the film. So until next time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe and check out this other video. Thank you.